This is a dot, and this is a line. Together, they become a letter.
This circle is the symbol of a smiling face.
This sign means the same to every driver.
This rectangle tells you where to post your mail.
This triangle shows you where you can camp.
This is the symbol of mortal danger.
And this cross, all over the world, means help is at hand.
Our everyday life is full of symbols, and the Red Cross is perhaps the most widely used of all.
Let's look a bit closer at what's in a symbol. The Red Cross every day, in newspapers and on television, as the symbol of help and protection all over the world.
Is not a symbol for our time alone. Many generations have benefited from it, both in war and in peace. Where and when did it start, and whose idea was it anyway?
In 1859, Henri Dunant, a Swiss from Geneva, found himself by chance on a battlefield near Solferino in Italy. Around him, 40,000 lay wounded or dying. He did what he could to help. The experience of Solferino led him to propose the idea of one society in every country to care for the wounded in war. In Geneva, a commission of prominent citizens worked to convene a conference of governments to establish in law the ideas of Henri Dunant. The Geneva Convention created a symbol, the reverse of the Swiss national flag, a red cross on a white background, a symbol for people to identify and respect hospitals, ambulances, and medical personnel looking after the wounded in times of war. As the years passed, more and more countries signed the Geneva Convention, and the Red Cross symbol spread as more and more national societies were formed. The first Geneva Convention was followed by 3 others.
What do the Geneva Conventions really mean?
Normally, if you kill someone, you commit the most serious crime. In war, you're acting under different rules. You're expected to defeat the enemy, and that may involve having to kill. But you should not have the right to kill anyone who can no longer fight. So the wounded, and all those who care for them, are protected under the first Geneva Convention.
Sailors, shipwrecked in war, are protected under the Second Geneva Convention.
Prisoners of war are protected under the Third Geneva Convention, and civilian victims of conflicts have their protection assured by the Fourth Convention.
In 1876, Turkey, at war with Russia, announced that to avoid confusion with the cross of the Christian religion, it would use a different symbol, a red crescent, later adopted by other Muslim nations as well.
Now there are 130 Red Cross and Red Crescent societies in the world. Together with the League as their federation and the International Committee in Geneva, these today are the 3 components of the International Red Cross.
times of conflict all over the world call on the Red Cross to help put out the flames in many trouble spots.
Protecting the humanitarian rights of prisoners is part of the job of young Swiss delegates like Jan, working from a regional office of the International Committee. Several times a year, like delegates in other regions of the world, Jan sets out on visits to prisoners. In times of conflict, these visits involve prisoners of war. At other times, they may also involve civilian internees, and in some countries, political detainees as well. As a Swiss national and a delegate from the original Swiss organisation of the International Red Cross, Jan is regarded by national authorities as a neutral go-between, respecting all sides and taking none. So he is able to go where others are not allowed. One day may be a visit to a prison. The next day may be organising an exchange of prisoners of war. Delegates listen carefully to serious complaints of mistreatment or inhumane conditions, and representations are made to the authorities concerned to try to improve things at once. For many prisoners and detainees, Jan is a link with the outside world. He is often the only one. He collects details of homes and families far from the prison itself, and transmits, through the Red Cross, messages that let those on the outside know where a husband, a father, a brother might be, or a message that simply says, all is as well as can be expected. Working in confidence is vital if Jan is to really do his job. He must be able to go where he wishes, to talk to whoever he wants, and whoever wants to talk to him. Prisoners must be visited individually, with no one else present to learn what might be said. The key to this delicate job is trust on all sides.
In our world today, the few who are rich are still greatly outnumbered by the darker lives of the poor. The skyscrapers of great cities attract thousands from the countryside every day, with dreams of streets paved with gold. Underneath is the uncaring reality, where poverty mushrooms, where neighbours are strangers, where it's everyone, man, woman and child, for themselves. Bogotá, capital of Colombia, is the city of the street urchins, known as the gamines, the runaways, the delinquents, the homeless, the unwanted. Twice a week, young volunteers of the Colombian Red Cross youth go out onto the streets in the dead of the night to do what they can to help. The mobile medical patrol can get to places and to young patients that government services cannot. Even the toughest street kids get sick, and there's nowhere else they can turn. Volunteers like Aleda now encourage the gamines to come to their own clinic, specially created for them with the help of sister societies and run by the Colombian Red Cross. Half the battle is persuading them to come at all. Suspicion and mistrust die hard. But the night patrols have opened a door, and the dentists and doctors have plenty to do whenever the gamines drop in. Most have chronic skin infections or injuries from the rough life of the streets. But now they do come, for the gamines know that Aleda and her friends have something to give and ask nothing in return.
In many parts of the world, disease is more common than good health. Health services need more than fine buildings. Ethiopia, like most developing countries, never has enough doctors and nurses and permanent medical staff. So Red Cross volunteers, under the guidance of experienced staff members, step in to help to achieve what governments cannot hope to do alone. If a social service is going to succeed, every hand is needed, and every hand cannot expect an immediate reward. Helping in hospitals is one of the first steps to take. Muhaddin, like most volunteers, has a few ideas of his own, and the Red Cross gives him a chance to go out and actually do something. With other volunteers, Muhaddin helps to run the Red Cross ambulance service, which is on call day and night. Training in first aid, basic health and nursing are everyday activities of the Red Cross. As Muhaddin learns, so he will teach others, and skills and ideals are passed on, and that's what development's all about. Muhaddin and his friends are not just on the sidelines while the rest of the world is enjoying the match. They are trained to act and help at a moment's notice, and that is their real goal.
Places on Earth, for reasons of conflict or even beliefs, people are forced to find refuge in countries which are not their own. Looking after refugees, tracing the missing, bringing people together, helping to start new lives is a duty of all national societies. The Malaysian Red Crescent, like other societies in Southeast Asia, has received thousands of refugees forced to leave neighbouring countries after years of war. Rosmawati, a Red Crescent volunteer, has, like all Malaysians, learnt very young of the ties that bind people together. A multiracial society is a good training ground for some of the movement's most important ideals. A mother and her daughters have been separated from a father and other children in their flight to safety. Rosmawati, with an interpreter at her side to help with an unknown language and unfamiliar names, records all the details she can. Family history, relations, clues to try to pinpoint 3 individuals among hundreds of thousands all go into the society's tracing system. Searching all references is a painstaking job. Mail for refugees sometimes brings word that someone has made it to somewhere. Long hours must be spent over the files, cataloguing, cross-referencing, trying to turn statistics into real people. And modern technology now lends a hand. In Geneva, the International Committee operates the Central Tracing Agency, a vast computer system available to all the world's tracing operations. A call to Geneva, and in a fraction of the time it might take 100 volunteers, a connection is made, a name is matched, a small moment of triumph for Rosmawati and her colleagues, and a great event for a family who will soon be together again. world, many specialised Red Cross services are run by highly trained volunteers, giving their free time for others.
Skiing is one of the most popular winter sports in Bulgaria. Like all sports with an element of risk, there are codes of safety to follow. Taking notice of public warnings, for example, especially of avalanches. But some people always know better, and their carelessness can cause great trouble for others. The Bulgarian Red Cross Mountain Rescue Corps is always ready for emergencies. Men and dogs are on the spot to come to the aid of others who are not so thoughtful or so well prepared. Ivan and the dog he has carefully trained himself are both volunteers. They could be enjoying themselves with everybody else on the proper ski slopes. Instead, they search a dangerous snowdrift, trying to save a life. Another life is saved, and another hard lesson is learned. Next time out on the slopes, give a thought for others.
Across the world, drugs are no longer a local problem confined to one or two traditional regions. Rome, like all big cities, has more than its share of social problems. In many of the squares of the inner city, hard drugs are easily available to young people. Hanging around under great pressure to buy more drugs most often leads to more crime. Addicts need help, but they don't always know where to turn. In Rome, the Italian Red Cross runs a therapeutic centre for addicts, staffed by young volunteers like Francesca. The Villa Maraini is a halfway house between the despair of addiction and the hope of a final cure. For Francesca, dealing with the clinical treatment of drug addicts of her own age is only a part of the story. In the difficult process of rehabilitation, the villa runs its own printing press, which produces work for the Red Cross. The volunteers work together with everyone to create a strong sense of community, where normal life can begin to pick up again. Francesca's regular visits to help at the villa keep her as busy as any full-time social worker. Everyone does everything together: cooking, eating, working, playing. Her concern is simply for others of her own age who have fallen on difficult times. Getting involved with them and getting them involved in as many activities as possible already means a good start on the hard road to recovery. Francesca and her colleagues organise the community into self-supporting groups, where everyone is expected to contribute according to his or her own capacity or skill. These skills often produce surprising results. Francesca and the other volunteers working at the Villa Maraini find there is plenty to learn themselves. Finding yourself learning a specialist craft is not what most volunteers expect. But Villa Maraini is a special place for everyone involved. craftwork produced is of high quality. Put on sale to the public, it brings in funds to help keep the villa going. An experiment in participation, finding some use again in the world, rediscovering that there is a community which cares. The Villa Maraini is a self-governing community. Everyone is involved in making decisions. Learning to make real decisions again is very important if you are trying to give life a serious chance once more.
Spreading the Red Cross message all over the world is a ceaseless task. Ideals, principles and the obligations of the Geneva Conventions. In Zaire, in the heart of Africa, a young Swiss of today is keeping alive the spirit of Henri Dunant's appeal from the battlefield. Jean-Jacques, a delegate of the International Committee, is carrying on a tradition that has earned more than a century of respect. The Geneva Conventions are still the only rules we have to try to give inhuman conflict a less inhuman face. These are the rules, the basic ideas of humanity that all young people should know. Jean-Jacques' task takes him to the farthest corners of every continent, to schools, to colleges, anywhere where the young are ready and willing to learn. Soldiers most of all need to understand human conduct in war, to understand what over the years has been agreed to limit the horror of human suffering and to respect at all times the fundamental rules of humanitarian law. Listening to lectures is never enough, for soldiers must have a simple and clear idea of humanity in times of conflict. Jean-Jacques tries to make sure that the message he brings will remain with his audience even in the heat of combat.
Francesca, facing suffering, follows the first, most basic Red Cross principle, humanity.
Jan, accepting all sides of a difficult situation, is acting according to the principle of impartiality. Jean-Jacques takes no sides at all, the requirement of neutrality.
Is best placed to reach the Gamines of Bogota because of Red Cross independence.
Ivan, giving his time and skills to mountain rescue, lives the principle of voluntary service.
For Rosmavati, in a country of varied peoples and cultures and religions, there can only be one national society under the principle of unity.
Muad'Din, in his work in Ethiopia, is encouraged because he knows that he's part of a worldwide family, the principle of universality.
The Red Cross story began in Geneva, the crossroads of international understanding and peace.
City of international organizations, where the International Committee was founded in 1863.
Home of the International Federation of Red Cross and Red Crescent Societies, the League.
Birthplace of Henri Dunant, who dreamed the first goals and the lasting spirit, and who, in 1901, was awarded the first Nobel Peace Prize.
Today it's Jan, Aleda, Ivan, Francesca, Jean-Jacques, Rosmavati, Muad'Din, and thousands of others all over the world who are Red Cross in action, and that's what's in a symbol.